I am Ruby, 29 years old, and tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. My engagement. I had dreamed of this moment since I was a teenager, sketching bridal dresses in the corners of my notebooks, imagining the warm applause of family, the blessings of elders, the pride in my parents' eyes. And for the first time in years, I thought fate had decided to smile on me. I walked into the grandly decorated hall where every corner glittered with lights, every table shimmered with floral arrangements, and the music vibrated softly with hope. My fiancé's family stood in a row, elegant and poised, their smiles rehearsed, their jewelry reflecting wealth. I whispered to myself, "Ruby, this is it. Your life is finally changing." But, just as I pressed my palms together, in silent gratitude, a sharp sound split the air. The groom's mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the polished floor. All heads turned toward her. She didn't smile. She didn't bless me. She looked directly into my eyes, and with a voice like a dagger, she said, "This girl is a liar." For a moment I thought I had misheard. The hall froze. Glasses remained mid-air. Forks stopped in motion. Whispers died in throats. "What?" I managed to whisper, but no sound seemed to escape. Then the groom's mother continued, louder this time, her words like fire. "She's deceiving all of you. She doesn't belong here." 1,000 eyes burned into me, and suddenly I felt naked, my soul stripped bare. My fiancé looked away. My own parents lowered their gaze as if ashamed. Betrayal cut through me sharper than any blade. But before I could gather the strength to defend myself, the entrance doors swung open. The lights flickered as if reacting to the storm about to unfold. And standing there, framed by the golden glow, was a man I had once loved deeply. A man I buried years ago in my heart. A man I thought was dead. He stood alive, breathing, and his eyes locked on mine with a darkness that promised one thing. My nightmare had just begun. My breath caught in my chest. My knees trembled as though the very ground beneath me had betrayed me. And for a few moments, I felt suspended between two worlds, one where I had celebrated my new beginning, and another where ghosts I had buried long ago were clawing their way back into my life. His name was Adeel. Years ago, he had vanished without explanation, swallowed by rumors of crime, violence, and ultimately, death. People whispered he had been shot in a gang dispute. Others said he had fled the country under a false identity. I had mourned him in silence, swallowed my grief, and when time finally dulled the edges of loss, I forced myself to let him go. But here he was, alive, breathing, smirking as if fate itself had conspired, with him to rip apart everything I had rebuilt. Adeel's presence sent ripples of chaos across the room. Guests gasped. My fiancé's family whispered furiously, and my own mother clutched her departure to her face as though shielding herself from a sin she could not bear to witness. The groom's mother pointed a sharp finger toward me and thundered, "See? This is the man she has been hiding from all of you. She was never pure, never honest. She betrayed her own family and ours." My lips trembled, words rising in my throat but dissolving into nothingness. I wanted to scream the truth, to deny their venom, but fear wrapped itself around my lungs like iron chains. Adeel's eyes bored into mine, filled with a mixture of rage and possession. He took one deliberate step forward, and his voice, calm yet venomous, slithered into the silence. "Did you really think you could erase me, Ruby? Did you really believe I was gone forever?" My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Memories I had spent years suppressing stormed back, the nights of whispered promises, the day he had vanished, the rumors of his crimes. And now, in this hall of celebration, he had returned like a spectre to drag me back into shadows I had barely escaped. My fiancé looked at me, his face pale with confusion and suspicion, his trust collapsing right before my eyes. I reached out to him instinctively, but he pulled away, retreating toward his family, as though I carried a contagion. The murmurs grew louder, crueler, like daggers thrown in the dark. And then, in a voice loud enough for every soul in that hall to hear, Adeel declared, "Ruby is mine and she always will be. You cannot take what belongs to me." The hall erupted into chaos. Voices collided like thunder. People rose from their seats, some in outrage, some in disbelief, and others with that sick kind of curiosity that thrives on scandal. My ears rang with overlapping shouts. Liar! Shame on her! How could she hide this? Yet through the cacophony, my heartbeat was the loudest sound, drumming like a war drum in my chest. I felt the walls closing in, the air thinning until it choked me. My father finally spoke, his voice breaking under the weight of humiliation. "Ruby, what have you done to us?" His words were not a question, they were an execution. Tears stung my eyes, but before I could form a defense, Adeel stepped closer, his presence swallowing the room. He wasn't dressed like the man I once knew, gone with the simple shirts and playful smirks. He wore a dark suit, tailored, expensive, carrying himself with the authority of someone who had clawed his way into power. A thin scar ran down his cheek like a silent witness to battles survived. When he smiled, it wasn't warmth, it was possession. He extended a hand toward me, as though daring me to refuse him in front of everyone. My body froze, but my soul screamed. I wanted to run, to disappear, but my legs felt cemented to the marble floor. The groom's family was already collecting their things, shaking their heads in disgust, muttering about deceit and dishonor. My fiancé, Rehan, turned his back to me, his silence heavier than any insult. I wanted to reach for him, to beg him to listen, but the invisible wall of betrayal stood unbroken. Then Adeel spoke again, his tone calm yet commanding, slicing through the uproar like a blade. "I told you once, Ruby, no matter where you run, I will find you. You thought death would keep me away? No. Death fears me. And tonight, everyone here will know that you belong to me, body, soul and fate." Gasps rippled across the hall. I felt my chest tighten, my world collapsing inward. And yet, deep in the pit of my stomach, a flame ignited not of fear this time, but of defiance. I clenched my fists at my sides and whispered under my breath, too low for anyone else to hear. "Not this time, Adeel. Not ever again." But whispers, no matter how quiet, have a way of finding ears when the tension in the air is heavy enough to slice with a knife. Adeel's gaze sharpened instantly, narrowing as though he had heard the words torn from my trembling lips. His smirk faltered into something darker, something hungrier. He took another deliberate step toward me, and suddenly, the crowd instinctively parted for him, like shadows fleeing the advance of fire. My body screamed for me to run, yet my feet betrayed me, frozen by the weight of every eye searing into my soul. The scent of roses from the elaborate decor now felt suffocating, a cruel reminder of a celebration that had transformed into my trial. "Ruby," Adeel whispered, though his voice carried across the hall like a storm. "Do you want to test me? Do you want these people to see the truth you buried with your silence?" I shook my head weakly, but my silence only fed the narrative he was weaving. Rehan's mother clutched his arm, whispering harshly in his ear. He didn't even look at me. My own parents kept their eyes glued to the floor, as though if they avoided my gaze, they could erase me from existence. The betrayal sank deeper than Adeel's words. My family had abandoned me at the very moment I needed them most. But Adeel wasn't. Finished, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small black envelope. My heart plummeted. He raised it high in the air, his eyes locked on mine with merciless triumph. "Do you want me to show them, Ruby?" he taunted. Murmurs rippled through the guests. My throat went dry, my body trembling. What was in that envelope? What past was he about to unleash? I wanted to scream at him, to snatch it away, but I couldn't move. Adeel slowly opened the envelope and began to slide out a photograph, its edges worn, its colors muted with age. My knees buckled when I recognized it, the one secret I had fought so hard to bury, the one connection that could shatter not just tonight, but every thread of trust I had left in this world. Gasps erupted from the nearest tables as the image came into view, though he hadn't even held it fully up yet. My blood turned to ice. My secret was no longer safe. My nightmare was only beginning. The photograph trembled between Adeel's fingers as though it carried a pulse of its own, and though only the edge was visible, I knew what lay inside that cursed frame. It wasn't just a picture, it was evidence of a life I had clawed desperately to forget. Adeel's lips curved into a cruel smile, and he tilted the photo ever so slightly, enough for a handful of guests to see. Their gasps pierced the hall like arrows, and soon whispers raced through the crowd faster than wildfire. I could hear fragments. Is that? No, it can't be. How could she hide something like this? My body locked in place, my breath shallow. I wanted to scream, to deny, but the truth clung to my throat like poison. Adeel's voice sliced through the murmurs. Do you see, everyone? This woman you were ready to honor tonight is nothing but a fraud. She lived a life none of you could imagine, and she thought she could bury it. But the dead always claw their way back. Don't they, Ruby? His emphasis on my name was venomous, almost intimate, as if he was stripping me layer by layer before the world. My father finally raised his head, his eyes hollow, his face etched with shame, and he whispered, not to me but to the hall. Why, Ruby? Why would you do this to us? The betrayal in his voice was louder than any slap. My mother broke down into quiet sobs, and Rehan's family began gathering their things in haste, muttering curses under their breath. Rehan himself stood like a stone, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between the photo and me, as though he couldn't reconcile the woman he had promised to marry, with the ghost staring back at him now. My chest ached with the urge to scream, that it wasn't what it looked like, that there was more, that I wasn't the monster they were making me out to be. But Adeel's laughter, low and guttural, drowned me out. He finally raised the photo high enough for the entire hall to see. The collective gasp that followed nearly shattered me. I closed my eyes, tears burning my cheeks, because I knew in that instant the secret I had buried 6 years ago was alive again, breathing, tearing apart the fragile life I had built brick by brick. And Adeel wasn't done. This was only the opening act of his revenge. The photograph slipped from his fingers and floated to the marble floor like a feather, but its weight was crushing, heavier than stone, pressing against my chest until I thought I would collapse. People surged forward to look, but I didn't need to, I already knew what they saw. It was me, younger, terrified, standing in a dimly lit room with Adeel beside me, his arm wrapped possessively around my shoulders, and in the corner of the frame lay the unmistakable shadow of a weapon glinting under weak light. That single image told a story of guilt, crime, and betrayal, one I had spent years erasing from my existence. The whispers exploded into full sentences now. She was with him. She knew. She was part of it. My stomach churned with nausea. My skin burned with shame. I tried to speak, but my voice failed me, drowned out by the noise of disgust. Rehan's mother spat the words like venom. We will not let our son's life be ruined by this filth. She pulled him by the arm, but he resisted for a moment, his eyes clashing with mine. For a fleeting second, I thought he would listen, that he would ask for the truth. But then Adeel stepped closer, resting a heavy hand on my shoulder. His touch sent shivers down my spine, not of love but of chains. And Rehan recoiled as if scorched. He turned away, his silence confirming what I already knew. I had lost him. My parents didn't move. They didn't speak. They let me drown in the flood of humiliation, as though I were already dead to them. Adeel leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered words that froze the blood in my veins. Do you remember the night this was taken? Do you remember what you promised me then? My knees buckled, my vision blurred, but I forced myself to stay upright. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall. I wanted to scream the truth, that I had been a victim, not a partner, that those eyes in the photo belonged to a girl trapped, terrified, used. But in this hall filled with venom, truth was weaker than lies. And Adeel knew it. He thrived on it. He raised his arms wide, commanding the room like a conductor of misery, and declared, "Ruby is not who you think she is. She belongs to me. And tonight she will come home where she belongs." The words, "She will come home where she belongs," rang in my ears like a verdict, a life sentence I hadn't agreed to serve. The hall that was supposed to be, filled with laughter and music, now pulsed with murmurs of condemnation, every glance a dagger, every whisper a blade. I stood in the center like a criminal dragged before a public court, yet no judge, no jury, no lawyer spoke for me. Only Adeel, my tormentor, had a voice. He gripped my wrist tightly, his fingers digging into my skin with the promise of bruises, and pulled me forward as though parading his victory. Guests parted reluctantly, some in fear, others in eager fascination, as if watching a play where tragedy was guaranteed. I struggled against his hold, but his strength was monstrous, his will unyielding. My heart screamed for my parents to intervene, for Rayhan to break his silence, for anyone to shout that this was madness. But silence was their answer, and silence hurt more than screams. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably, while my father turned away, his shoulders slumped in defeat, as if he had washed his hands of me. Adeel's laughter echoed against the gilded walls, cruel and victorious. He bent his head near mine, speaking words no one else could hear. "I told you once, Ruby, your fate is tied to mine. No matter who tries to separate us, no matter how far you run, you will always be dragged back into my shadow. You are mine until the end." His voice was low, almost tender, but it carried the weight of chains and graves. Something inside me cracked, then not my spirit, that the fragile illusion I had clung to, that others would save me, that love or blood would shield me. No, the truth struck me with searing clarity. No one was coming. If I wanted freedom, if I wanted survival, if I wanted to carve out even a fragment of dignity, I would have to fight for it myself. My fists clenched, my jaw tightened, and though fear churned in my veins like acid, defiance sparked in my chest like fire. I lifted my eyes, locked them onto Adeel's, and whispered, barely audible but laced with steel, "You can drag me, Adeel, but you will never own me." For the first time that night, his smirk faltered, and the crack in his mask was all the proof I needed. He could be shaken. The slight flicker in Adeel's expression lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough to feed the fire that had begun to rage inside me. He tightened his grip on my wrist, his nails biting into my skin, his eyes narrowing with a fury that promised punishment. Yet beneath that fury I saw something else: fear. The realization emboldened me, pushing the tremor from my voice as I raised it for the first time in the suffocating silence. "You don't own me. You never did." My words ricocheted through the hall like a crack of thunder, silencing whispers, freezing movement. For a split second there was stillness, broken only by the shallow rhythm of 100 gasps. Adeel snarled, his jaw tightening, his voice dropping to a growl. "Don't test me, Ruby. You know what I can do. You know what I have already done." His threat was not an empty one, for the shadows of his past deeds loomed in my memory, like scars that never healed. But this time, I refused to lower my head. My voice rose again, steadier, louder. "Yes, I know. I know everything you've done, and I will never let you destroy me again." My declaration sent ripples across the hall. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at me with wide eyes, but none dared intervene. Rayhan's face twisted with conflict, his lips parting as though he wanted to speak, but his mother tugged his arm sharply, silencing him. My parents remained statues, broken, ashamed, but unwilling to fight. And then, with chilling precision, Adeel released my wrist, only to clap slowly, mockingly, the sound echoing off the ornate walls. "Bravo, Ruby," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You've grown a spine. But tell me, will that spine hold when I reveal the rest of your secrets?" My stomach dropped. The photograph had been just the beginning proof of a past entanglement. What else did he hold in his arsenal? Adeel reached into his jacket once more, and my heart hammered against my ribs. He pulled out a small flash drive, glinting like a shard of doom. Lifting it high, he smirked at the stunned faces around us and declared, "This little device contains the truth of who Ruby really is. Shall we show them?" The hall erupted with whispers again, fear and anticipation mingling like poison. My body stiffened, my resolve tested. If he exposed whatever lay inside that flash drive, there would be no turning back. I knew then this battle was no longer about survival alone. It was about reclaiming the very story of my life. The tiny flash drive glimmered under the chandelier like a cursed jewel, and the weight of every eye in the hall shifted toward it as though the secrets inside were already bleeding into the air. My pulse thundered in my ears, my breath ragged, but I forced my voice to cut through the storm. "Don't you dare." The words came out steadier than I felt, but Adeel only laughed, a hollow, venomous sound that seemed to crawl along the walls. He held the device between two fingers, waving it with theatrical cruelty. "Oh, but I must," he said. "How else will they see the real Ruby, the one who stood by me, who walked into fire with me, who isn't the innocent victim she pretends to be?" His words were daggers, sharp and merciless, and I could see them carving into Rehan's heart as he stood frozen, his mother whispering poison into his ear. My father's fists clenched at his sides, his knuckles pale, but still he said nothing. My mother's sobs echoed faintly, but no one came forward, no one stood for me. It was then that I realized the cruelty of silence. It is louder than condemnation, more suffocating than screams. Adeel strode toward the projector at the edge of the hall, his every step a sentence passed against me. I lunged forward, my hand shooting out to grab his arm, but he was faster, stronger, dragging me aside like a rag doll. Gasps rippled as he inserted the flash drive, the screen flickering to life. For a heartbeat, the hall went silent, breathless, waiting for the verdict of pixels and shadows. My heart clenched like a fist inside my chest. And then, the first image appeared grainy, nightmarish, undeniable. It was me, standing in a room filled with men whose faces I had tried so hard to forget, men who had haunted my nights with their threats and demands. I looked younger, terrified, my eyes wide with a helplessness that burned even through the frozen frame. The murmurs erupted like thunder. She was with them. She was part of it. Shame coiled around me like a noose, pulling tighter with every second. Adeel turned to the crowd, arms outstretched as though he were unveiling a masterpiece. "See?" he bellowed. "This is your Ruby. Not a bride, not a saint. A liar, a traitor, a girl who belongs to the shadows I rule." My vision blurred, my legs trembling, but even as the hall closed in, even as the world seemed to collapse around me, something in my chest hardened. I could not let him write my story with lies and chains. Not anymore. My voice cracked but rose above the storm. "That is not who I am." The hall recoiled at my outburst, as though the very walls were startled by my defiance. My voice quivered, but it carried the force of years of buried pain, clawing its way into daylight. I stepped forward, my fists trembling, my throat raw, but I forced each word into the silence. Yes, that was me in the picture. Yes, I was there in that room. But do you know why? Do you know what he did to me? My eyes locked on Adeel's, and for the first time, he flinched, not visibly enough for the crowd to notice. But I saw it. The crack in his armor. I seized it. He tracked me. He dragged me into his world when I was 19, when I didn't know how to fight back. He made me believe there was no escape, that I was nothing without him. He threatened my family. He threatened my life. Every smile you see in those pictures is a mask I wore because I was terrified of what he would do if I didn't. My words spilled like fire, each syllable burning the years of silence I had swallowed. Gasps rippled through the hall. Some faces shifted from disgust to doubt, others from judgment to unease. Rehan's grip on his mother's arm loosened slightly, his eyes searching mine with a flicker of conflict. My father's jaw clenched, his gaze flickering between me and Adeel, as though cracks of realization were breaking through his shame. Adeel snarled, stepping closer, trying to cut me off. Lies. She's lying to save herself. His voice thundered, but I refused to retreat. I stepped toward him, fire in my veins, my voice rising above his. If I was lying, Adeel, why would you keep me silent all these years? Why would you stalk me, haunt me, and threaten to ruin me the moment I tried to live again? Because you know the truth. You know you stole my voice, my choices, my life. But tonight you won't steal them anymore. The hall erupted in gasps again, whispers splitting like cracks across ice. Adeel's eyes blazed with fury, his fists curling at his sides. For the first time since he appeared, he no longer looked invincible, he looked cornered, exposed, desperate. And in that fragile crack of his power I felt it, the tide shifting. Slowly, painfully, my voice was becoming stronger than his chains. The shift was almost imperceptible, but I felt it like a tremor beneath the ground. Crowd certainty beginning to waver, the absolute power Adeel wielded starting to crack. He sensed it too, and the fear hiding behind his fury made his voice sharper, louder, more desperate. Don't listen to her, he roared, veins bulging at his temples. She's twisting the truth, just like she twisted me. She begged me to take her in, begged me to keep her safe, and now she wants to paint herself a victim. His words lashed out like whips, but this time, the sting didn't reach me. I stood taller, straighter, my hands no longer trembling but clenched into fists of defiance. Yes, I begged you once, I shouted back, my voice ringing through the hall, but not because I loved you. Because I had no choice. I was a girl drowning, and you pretended to throw me a rope only to wrap it around my neck. Gasps broke through, the crowd like thunderclaps, and for the first time, I saw heads nodding, eyes softening, truth seeping into the cracks of their judgment. Rehan's chest heaved with conflict, his lips parting, but no words came yet. My father stepped forward a single pace, his face torn between rage and regret, while my mother's sobs turned into muffled prayers. Adeel's mask fractured, his calm veneer stripped away. His hand shot toward me, gripping my arm violently, his nails biting into my flesh. Enough, he bellowed, shaking me with a force that rattled my bones. The hall erupted into shouts, some urging him to stop, others too afraid to intervene. My breath came in ragged bursts, but I met his blazing eyes without flinching. You can try to silence me, I whispered, though the whole room heard, but the truth is louder than your threats. And tonight, they all see it. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in the faces of the guests, not toward me, but toward him. Whispers shifted, words like monster, abuser, and control rippled through the air. The power he once held, so absolute, so suffocating, was slipping through his fingers like sand. His grip on me tightened, as though he could anchor himself through my pain. But I no longer felt like prey. I felt the fire of survival, the weight of resilience, and the spark of justice igniting in my veins. And as his hand trembled against my skin, I knew his reign over me was ending. In that moment, I realized the truth. Fear had always been Adeel's greatest weapon, and I had been its prisoner for far too long. But now, before the eyes of everyone who once doubted me, I shattered those chains. I yanked my arm free from his grip with a force I didn't know I possessed, and the sound of my defiance echoed louder than his rage. He stumbled back, his composure cracking, his face twisting into something feral, monstrous. "You think you're free?" He spat, his voice trembling, no longer in control but in panic. I took a step forward, my voice ringing with a strength born of survival. "I don't think, Adeel. I know. Because tonight your lies end. Tonight they see the truth." The hall, once filled with venomous whispers, erupted differently now. Gasps, murmurs of shock, not at me, but at him. My father finally stepped forward, his voice breaking but resolute. "Enough. We will not be silent anymore." My mother clutched my hand, her tears no longer of shame but of solidarity. Even Rahan, though torn and wounded, faced Adeel with clenched fists, no longer retreating. The crowd shifted, no longer an audience to my humiliation, but witnesses to his downfall. Adeel's fury boiled over. He lunged at me, his hand raised. But before he could strike, several guests rushed forward, restraining him, their voices rising in condemnation. "Monster! Abuser, liar!" His struggles echoed with desperation, not dominance. For the first time, I saw him not as an unstoppable force, but as a man drowning in the collapse of his own control. My chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, my body trembling not from fear but release. I turned to the hall, my voice carrying with it every scar, every wound, every ounce of resilience I had forged. "You all saw who he is. You all saw what he did. And I swear to you, this is not the end, it is only the beginning. I will fight. I will rise. And I will never be silenced again." The applause that followed was hesitant, fragile, but real, like the first crack of dawn after endless night. My tears streamed freely, not of despair, but of freedom reclaimed. And as Adeel was dragged out, his curses echoing into the distance, I felt the weight of years lift from my shoulders. I was no longer the girl he had chained. I was Ruby, survivor, fighter, and my story had only just begun. And to those who heard me, who believed in me, who want to walk with me through this journey of truth and resilience, stay with me, because the fight for justice doesn't end here. It begins now. Like this story, share it. Subscribe. For every Ruby who refuses to be silenced, your voice matters too.